Welcome to r/JustNoHOA, where people tell stories about their crazy homeowner associations. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. HOA president called the police on me over a hose. My garage floor was in need of a deep cleaning, so I rented a power washer this morning. Background: the garages are detached from my unit. This is in a condo complex. They are side by side and directly across from a small parking lot. There's a hose in front of each unit, which is used primarily to water the grass in front, and some use it to wash their car as well. Anyway, as I am in the middle of power washing my garage, had to keep the door up, the HOA president runs up to me and starts frantically screaming, "You're not allowed to do that." I replied that I'm almost finished, and besides, the hose is free for all to use. She then proceeds to turn off the water and disconnect the hose from the faucet. And shut off the water supply from the main. As the room where the water can be turned on and off is accessible by all, I inform her that I will connect my own hose and turn the water back on. She then informs me that would constitute trespassing and the police will be called. To which I laugh, inform her what trespassing actually means, and remind her that my common charges go toward the water bill. She actually denied that common expenses pay for the water bill, and I replied, "That's fine, I was about to send a certified letter to get financials for the past 8 years anyway." She keeps yapping at me, so I finally tell her to shut up and that the one and only reason she's yapping away at me is that 1. I have sued the HOA and further litigation is very likely in the near future, see my other threads for much more detail if you're interested, and 2. She is the stereotypical power-hungry retiree with nothing better to do on a Sunday morning than complain at someone simply trying to clean their garage. And yes, that is what I said verbatim. An hour later, there's a knock on my door by the town police. The officer had an almost apologetic tone. He tried to explain to the woman that this is an HOA issue and nothing more, but she insisted that someone come out. This is a very quiet suburb with police that have very little to do. He basically just said to defuse the situation, which I will, as this whole event honestly got me a bit shaken up. Of course, nothing happened beyond that. Violation letters will undoubtedly be on the way, and I'm sure they will hold yet another hearing shortly. There's nothing in the CCRs about outdoor water usage per se, just general language about use of common elements. Any thoughts on how to handle this? So guys, what is your opinion on that situation? How should OP handle that? Let us know in the comments. Just solved another neighbor's problem. I have not even lived in my new community for a year and I'm already on the HOA board. I wanted to get involved to make sure there's no misplaced funds or other shady stuff, but they appointed me to the board and now I'm turning the whole HOA around. Last week, a neighbor told me that he has gotten a letter that our HOA is taking him to court about some fence issue. So I read our notes on the case. And I read the bylaws and I asked questions until I got to the crux of the issue. There was no reason his request to move his fence was denied other than HOA did not like it. No rule, no justification. Apparently, he needs a compelling reason to do what he wants with his own property. And now this poor guy has a court bill because he put up a fence that some frustrated housewife did not like. So I put a stop to that. If we don't have a compelling reason to deny a request, it is approved. My motion to drop the case and reimburse the unjust legal fees passed. Well, apparently it just takes one person to turn around an HOA. But then again, would you guys really be willing to waste your time and join an HOA in order to turn it around? Personally, I would not be interested in getting involved in things like that. The next story might involve death, so be aware. It is titled Richard Glazel's Revenge on his HOA. So just to start off, this is a pretty old story I remembered from not long after I moved out to the backwater armpit of Satan we call Arizona and was instrumental in my parents not buying a house in a neighborhood with an HOA initially. I don't think I have seen the story around this Reddit yet, so I decided to post what I remember and what I was able to dig back up about the case. I will post a couple of old news articles about him at the end and what eventually happened to him. Oh, and if anyone wants to use this or the links provided, have at it. Backstory. This part of the story takes place shortly before 2000. In my state, we have numerous retiree communities that are run by HOAs, the vast majority of them, in my experience, as a respite and habilitation provider, can be summarized simply as near to full-on tyrannical in their inter-community politics, often targeting members out of the clique, while heavily favoring those who fell in line. In this case, it all started with Richard and new HOA board, henceforth going to be abbreviated as NHB for convenience's sake. From what details I can remember, Richard had lived in his house in the community under the prior HOA board and had lived in his house for close to 10 years. Prior, a community mailbox was installed near his driveway and had the borders of his house lined with row hedges. These two details will be important later. However, around early 2000, a new HOA governing board was elected. By this time, many others had moved into the area and had begun parking in front of the aforementioned mailbox, a number of which, to my memory, were NHB board members. Richard had at first tried talking to the offending mailbox blockers that would block his driveway. Eventually, however, he would resort to simply parking his car in front of the driveway and by extension the mailboxes. In retaliation, the NHB would tow his car and invoice Richard for it. In addition to this, Richard was not the type to constantly preen and prune his hedges around his house or keep the lawn well kept, and the HOA as a result began to send landscapers to trim them for him and would naturally invoice him every time they did for the bill. Richard, both verbally and in writing, in rather rude terms requested they not send them and denied the landscapers access to his house, but he was still invoiced for them being contracted and sent away. Eventually, as I remember, the NHB would send the landscapers to his home when he was away or not home and then invoice him the costs after. Finally, having enough to my memory, Richard ended up killing off his yarn and hedges to force NHB to stop sending landscapers. But due to the laws in my state and the NHB's bylaws itself, they were able to sue for the cost of all the invoices sent over the course of nearly a year or so and managed to foreclose on Richard's house for unpaid fees, where he was forced to move out and chose to move to California for a time. The revenge. With the events leading up to the nuclear revenge set in place, now we can discuss Richard's revenge. Richard, to my memory, had been practically living out of a trailer for a little while, stewing over his treatment at the hands of his former NHB. Richard had still owned a storage unit in Arizona which contained his rifle and 2 semi-automatic handguns. That April, he returned to Arizona with one goal in mind: revenge. Richard's former HOA held official meetings bi-yearly with other smaller meetings for emergencies or when voted to convene. Richard entered the NHB's meeting with his weapons, firing and killing 2 board members outright, wounding one more and wounding another during a scuffle with another man trying to wrestle his rifle away from him. When later questioned why he committed the crime, his only response was, "I was getting even." Later, Richard was sentenced to death for the murders, passing of natural causes while still on death row. In the end, as I recall, the HOA was disbanded for some time following the wake of the murders. They have at this point re-established, but from what I recall, they have been quite careful who they elect to the board. And that is the story as I remember it. Sorry if some details are a little vague, sparse or slightly off on some details. These events happened almost 20 years ago now, and I was fairly young at the time, having only been told the story later by my father and friends and a little side research of my own, and I thought that it might fit well on this subreddit. And you know guys, the first time I read this story I thought, what kind of fake BS is that? But actually the OP provided several sources for the story and it is in fact true. So to sum up, this guy lost his home at the complex to foreclosure and then later sought revenge by killing 2 people. So yeah guys, even if you hate your HOA, please never go that far. When your own bylaws bite you. So this last year we had a takeover of sorts with our HOA. Lots of fresh blood who honestly seem to have the community's best interest at heart. Now, side note, we purposely bought into this HOA and are glad they are stepping up. Things were getting really bad. So the board finally put together a fining committee which was needed to start reinforcing violations. Our property manager is a bit of a hard ass, but will work with you if you talk to him. Well, one of our brand new sparkling board members got hit with a violation. Rule 1 is no board member can have any fines or violations to their name, so these have to be taken care of fairly quickly, and theirs was a stupid simple fix. Simply moving something that was literally it. Nope. Turns out they went on a rant about how they are a board member and are exempt from violations. Well, that does not fly with our property manager at all. He digs his heels in and back and forth with her entitlement just knowing no bounds. How does it end, you might ask? Well, because no one backed her and she does not want to be forced to deal with the same bylaws she is forcing others to adhere to. Not only is she stepping down off the board, but she is selling her home. By the way guys, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you so much. The next story was posted by user BillC1958 on our own subreddit r/ripe stories. The story is titled Entitled Tenants. Hey Mr. Ripe, how about another story from when I was an apartment manager? This is actually not just a single story, but kind of a compilation dealing with a particular type of tenant/prospective tenant. We can call it Entitled Tenants. At this job, there were 2 employees besides myself during the day. One was our maintenance man, who I will call Bob, and the other was the most amazing cleaning lady, who I will call Lee. She did not work for our company, but rather for the cleaning company we contracted with. When I say she was amazing, I don't just mean keeping the building clean, which she did, but she was an absolute expert at handling difficult tenants and actually knew how to do my job as well as some of the maintenance. This was a bonus for our company because if I was sick or on vacation, they did not need to bring someone in from another property to cover for me. Lee was perfectly able to cover. Our building was kind of like a mini United Nations. We had tenants from many parts of the world and most were really wonderful. I particularly loved this because I am an amateur linguist and would always try to say something to people in their native language, even if it was only hello or thank you. I had one fantastic tenant who was my go-to lady if I needed an Arabic interpreter. This came in handy often because I had a Syrian couple in the building and the wife spoke no English. But there was one particular nationality, which I won't identify, which was always problematic. I should mention that I don't have any particular prejudice toward that nationality. My brother-in-law is from that country and he's a truly fantastic person. But what I later learned is that these people who came here not as permanent residents but on work visas were, in their home country, quite wealthy. While their money did not go as far in the US, they were quite entitled and were used to having servants to boss around. So naturally, they thought they were going to boss around Lee, Bob and me. Wrong. Summers can be fairly hot here and so each apartment has central air conditioning. But these people did not seem to understand how it worked. They would leave it turned off while they were at work, come home in the late afternoon, turn it on and expect their apartment to be instantly cool and comfortable. So they were constantly calling maintenance after hours claiming it was not working. And of course, maintenance would patiently try to explain to them that they could not leave it turned off all day and expect it to instantly cool a hot apartment in the late afternoon. I still remember the morning one of those entitled tenants, dissatisfied with the response from maintenance, marched into my office to complain. I was trying to explain for the umpteenth time how it worked. Lee came in behind them and when they did not accept my answer, tried to explain it to them herself. Tenant whining, "But Mrs. Lee, you do not understand. It is not functioning properly." Lee, "No, you do not understand. It is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, but it's not possible for it to cool a hot apartment so quickly. You cannot leave it turned off all day." Naturally, it was like talking to a brick wall. I rolled my eyes and Lee firmly ushered them out of my office and closed the door on them. She was always so good like that, she took no nonsense from entitled people. That particular type of person was always a source of frustration and aggravation to me because they were absolutely convinced that the rules did not apply to them. that they were so special that I would make all kinds of exceptions for them and that I had some kind of authority to lower their rent. We had certain rules about taking applications from prospective tenants. First, there was an application fee which was used to run a credit check. We did not rent to anyone with a bad credit history. Further, that money had to be in the form of a cashier's check from a bank or a money order. We were very clear that we did not accept credit cards, personal checks or cash for this. We also had fixed office hours. This is the gist of a telephone call I received one morning from a prospective tenant. I knew from the accent where he was from and from the tone of voice that he was not going to listen to anything I said. AM, annoying man. Bill, me, frustrated manager. Bill, thank you for calling Redacted Apartments. This is Bill. How may I help you? AM,
oh, good morning to you, Mr. Bill. I am...
Insert ridiculously long name.
I'm looking for a 2-bedroom apartment.
Bill, alright sir, how soon are you needing it? AM,
hopefully by the 1st of the month.
Bill, I can help you with that. Our 2-bedroom apartments are X number of square feet and rent for X dollars a month, with all utilities included. AM,
oh, that is too much.
I'm sorry sir, but that is pretty standard for 2-bedroom apartments in this area.
Is there nothing you can do?
I'm sorry?
You cannot give me a lower rent?
No sir, not for a 2-bedroom apartment. I can offer you a 1-bedroom apartment for X dollars a month.
No, it must be 2-bedroom. Because we have 2 children. When may I come and view the apartment?
Bill, I'm closed from 12 until 1 for lunch and then I close for the day at 5.
And how much is the application fee?
The application fee is X dollars and must be in the form of a cashier's check or money order. We cannot accept cash, personal check or credit cards for this. The fee is non-refundable if we are unable to approve your application or if you decide not to take the apartment.
Alright then, I will bring you my personal check at 5:30.
Bill, sir, the office closes at 5. I won't be here at 5:30. Also, as I told you, we do not accept personal checks for the application fee. It must be a cashier's check or money order.
Alright then, so I will see you at 5:30.
Sir, no, the office closes at 5 PM. Nobody will be here at 5:30. AM seems shocked.
You will not remain open for me?
I'm sorry sir, I cannot do that. I will be open again tomorrow morning at 9. I'm also open on Saturdays from 9 to 1.
Oh, so then I will come at 5. I will bring my checkbook. If I do not get the apartment, you will of course return my check?
Bill, ready to reach through the phone and strangle this guy. Sir, please listen to what I'm telling you. I close at 5. You must come before then, at least 20 minutes to process the application. You cannot give me a personal check for the application fee. It must be a cashier's check from a bank or a money order. And as I stated before, we cannot refund this fee if your application is not approved or if you decide not to accept the apartment. AM finally says he understands, agrees to come at 5:30 with a cashier's check. He shows up at 4:55 with a personal check. If Lee had not already left for the day, she probably would have read him the riot act. I just told him I was leaving in 5 minutes, that he had not listened to what I told him and that we would not be able to rent him an apartment. I tell you, I have earned every single grey hair on my head. Thank you very much Bill for posting that tasty entitled people story. That guy in the story kind of reminds me of my dad, who also never listens to what someone is saying. You know, some people you tell them something and it goes in one ear and comes out the other one instantly. Do you know people like that in your life? Let us know in the comments. And the last story is gonna be from r/church drama. And basically, in case you're not aware, this is a sub that I did many times in the past, and a lot of my old school fans always request me to read it, so this is basically a bit of a fan service. However, even if you're not familiar with the subreddit church drama, I would suggest to stay and listen, because this story is actually pretty good. It is titled "New Pastor Hated and Turned Everyone Against Me." When I was 15, back in 2010, the church I grew up in got a new pastor. His name is Rick L. I was very tempted to give out his full name, but that would mean revealing what town I live in. Rick was appointed after the church members voted for him because our previous pastor cheated on his wife and vanished after it came to light. The previous pastor's name was Richard. Even though Richard was a scumbag for having an affair while preaching the importance of not being sexually immoral, he preached about it a lot when I was a kid, he treated me kindly. He favored me and let me be a part of the community. He would brag on me, he would let me show my talents to the church, including my language skills and my musical talent. My mom says that he did not like her or my dad, so he must have taken pity on me, and that is why he treated me so well. For all I know, she could be right. After each member voted on Rick, he became the official new pastor. After he preached a few times, he wanted to start being involved in youth activities. The youth group and the youth pastor, along with Rick, went downstairs one Sunday and I wanted to talk to him. I cannot remember what about, so being my cringy teenage self, I poked him on the arm a few times and he looked up at me like he was disgusted that I touched him. The look in his eyes immediately made me recoil. I knew then that he was not going to like me. And I was right. Every ounce of joy I had being at that church was drained away in the span of 2 years. It was small things at first. He changed up the way the Sunday school would function, separating by gender and age, making each Sunday school class much smaller. I know this was not to spite me, but it sucked regardless. Then he hired a new youth pastor, Mike M, and his wife Stephanie M. Mike was a total effing douchebag. Mike almost deserves his own story, but some of the things he did while he was the youth pastor included bent down and nut punched both of my younger brothers, making one of them cry. They were 13, twins. In the church bus, he pulled over once and asked someone if they needed a ride, and when the person lit up and smiled, saying, "Yeah man, thanks," Mike said,
"I hope you find one,"
and pulled away. When I confronted Mike about hitting my brothers, he yelled in my face telling me not to talk to him that way. All I had said was, "Why did you do that? You hurt them." I told Rick about it and he said, "Mike wouldn't do that," and walked away. There was some drama about a new girl named Rebecca and she said some crap about me, probably jealous that I was friends with her boyfriend or something, so anytime I wanted to try to make peace with her, adults from the youth leadership would always intervene, treating me like a criminal. I found out later that Rick told them that he thought I had violent tendencies. This was based on nothing, as I have not been in a fistfight since I was 9. When I was 17, the teacher for the older teens girls class was Melanie. I hate her too. She once said that what happened in our past did not matter. I got upset because I had been going through depression and self-harming at the time, so it very much did matter to me. Melanie told Rick that I threatened to jump over the table and strangle her. I did not, so Rick kicked me out of the youth group. To sum up the stories, Rick blamed me for a friend of mine being possessed by a demon, told me with his finger in my face,
"You will not corrupt any more of our youth,"
told the most influential members of the church it was my fault. When people came to him and told him they wanted nothing to do with me, he did nothing. He sat back and watched as everyone shunned me. This led me to being more suicidal at church than anywhere else. Rick would not let me do anything with the youth group anymore. I was not allowed to participate in the youth Wednesday night services. I left the church for a few months and came back when I was 18 with a new determination to be the best Christian I could be. I was trying my hardest to serve God and truly be a good Christian. The way people treated me did not change. Rick had made it so you were done with the youth group when you were 18 instead of the previous 21. Rebecca was 18, we had made peace by then, no thanks to the church, and still going to Sunday school. I was jealous and lonely. There was no one else in the regular service my age to sit with, so I went downstairs and calmly explained to Melanie that since the age was 18 now and Rebecca was 18, it was not fair that I had to be upstairs by myself. She calmly said that it was not the time to talk about it, so I complied and went back upstairs. My friends in there later said that Melanie's husband, Gabe, came in the room and Melanie said,
"OP just came in here and threw a fit,"
which of course got its way back to Rick. He did not say anything to me though. I was given permission to go to youth services on Wednesday nights and I asked Melanie if I could sing on the platform I had wanted for years. She said,
"I will have to pray about it."
That was the final straw. She would have to pray about me, who was trying my best, genuinely, but she let Jacob on the platform? Everybody in the youth group knew Jacob was about the least godly as you could get. He was doing drugs, having sex, and was not shy about it, but they would have to pray about me? I left that church for good. I blame all this on Rick. Things were good before he showed up. 2 years later, my only sister died. I went back to that church one last time to look for comfort. I submitted a prayer request for peace of mind. This was 6 days after my sister died. I watched as Rick read through every prayer request and then skipped over mine. That was it. I hated this man and I wanted him to pay, and he never has. Earlier this year, he got a better gig and left our small town church. I reached out to him on Facebook Messenger, explaining everything and that he had hurt me. He never replied. And unfortunately guys, this unsatisfying yet interesting church drama story is the last one for today. Please let me know if you want to hear more church drama. And with that, I hope you have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow.